Hello and welcome back to another document deep dive. This is the third installment of our look at the battle for Kresov, and this is how we left the situation in the morning of the 25th of July 1944. Just to remind you, most of these German units are from the Field Training Regiment North Ukraine, so the numbered companies here, the 6th, 7th, 2nd and 7th New Company, or new 7th Company, I guess you could say, which are all from the 2nd Battalion. The 3rd Battalion had been holding down here, but had been pushed back by the Russians and was now in full retreat after they crossed the river. Now, there is also an 8th Company, which is the heavy weapons company that was holding together with these units in Kresov, so heavy machine guns, mortars, that kind of thing. K denotes Unit Kettenball, which consisted of security units reinforced by flak students from an anti-aircraft school. These Russian forces were mostly from the 71st Rifle Division, namely the 126th Rifle Regiment. And as you can see, they were on the move here. And when we last left the situation, the Germans had just made plans for evacuation, namely that Unit Kettenball was to hold out at the bridge for as long as possible, while 6th and 7th companies would withdraw across the river, and then Unit Kettenball would be the last across, leading to, hopefully, a clean retreat. Now in the evening, the situation had changed to a degree. At this point, the 3rd Battalion had completely withdrawn to the north, and a new line, provisionally by the 2nd, 7th New and 5th Company, had been created to shield the crossing side with lots of Russian pressure coming from the southeast. We're gonna continue reading the German AAR. 1900 hours. The battalion commander, adjutant and operations clerk proceed to the blocking line of the 5th Company. But in the forest they come under heavy machine gun and rifle fire from enemy forces that had already broken through. They therefore withdraw to the road junction at the northwestern exit of Kopki. The commander orders parts of 11th Company, from the 3rd Battalion, to reverse course. Remember, these were retreating northwards. To reverse course and block the road in the forest to the southeast. The elements of the 11th Company that were deployed are, after a short time, relieved by a platoon from the new 7th Company that has been brought forward. So that's what you can see here. So there were already Russians in this area. The situation was very unstable. Since the 3rd Battalion has already been completely withdrawn through the bridgehead and the enemy is pressing hard in pursuit, the situation in the blocking positions of the 5th and new 7th Company becomes critical. Therefore, at 1930 hours, the commander decides to give the signal to evacuate the bridgehead. The battalion command post is moved to Kopki in order to reorganize the units disengaging from the bridgehead there. 20:38 hours, without any order from the battalion, 3 Red Star cluster signal flares are fired within the bridgehead, and 7 minutes later, before any intervention is possible, the bridge is blown up. As later interrogations reveal, Captain Kettenbeil had abandoned his post against explicit orders and led his unit, although the bridge was still intact, across the San north of the bridge, without waiting for the 6th and 7th companies to withdraw. 20:45 hours. The commander intercepts a retreating platoon of the 2nd Company south of the southeastern exit of Kopki, which reports that the enemy is attacking heavily at the bridge side. As it must be assumed that elements of the 6th and 7th Companies are still within the bridgehead, the commander personally leads this platoon back south, its left flank anchored on Budi. Now, Budi, I should say, is one of these hamlets here that is only roughly drawn in. Through this action, and through the steadfast stand of the 5th Company, the enemy is halted and it proves possible to extract almost the entire 6th and 7th Companies from the bridgehead. However, during the bridge demolition, parts of the 7th Company and the attached 8th Company were blown into the air, and some of those who attempted to cross in panic drowned. The Russian report confirms this. This is from the 126th Rifle Regiment AAR. It says, the 2nd Rifle Battalion, in execution of the division commander's orders by 0400, relieved the units of the 131st Rifle Regiment on the line Hill 206, Eledzini, Kamienka, Podolchanka, Kostova, Bystre, and immediately began carrying out its combat mission to seize Kamienka, Ordinashka, Podgora, Kneshov Dolny, and the locality of Kreshov. Through swift actions of its subunits, by 1700 the battalion had completely captured Kamienka, Ordinashka, Kreshov Dolny, and Bystre. The enemy, numbering up to 800 infantrymen, offered stubborn resistance and continued to hold the township of Kreshov. After regrouping his forces and fire assets, the commander of the 2nd Rifle Battalion, Senior Lieutenant Shesak, began the assault on Kreshov. The attack was so swift and overwhelming for the enemy that he, offering no serious resistance, began hastily retreating to the left bank of the San River in the direction of Budi, abandoning equipment and weapons. In his haste to retreat, the enemy blew up the bridge over the San River, leaving more than 400 soldiers stranded on its right bank, running about in confusion. In hand-to-hand combat, they were eliminated. Thus, having been routed in Kreshov, the enemy hastily withdrew towards Tarnogora, while part of the defeated groups retreated through Konstantinov towards Rudnik. This clearly shows that the Russians also overestimated how many casualties they inflicted. We will return to the German AAR. 23:15 hours from the road junction at the southwestern exit of Kopki, the commander orders a withdrawal to the north. The new 7th Company and the 2nd Company are disengaged and take over flank security on the west and east sides of the road, while the 5th Company, acting as rearguard, remains in contact with the enemy for another 20 minutes before withdrawing in stages, providing covering fire to the rear. Enemy losses cannot be determined due to the ongoing withdrawal. However, according to company reports, enemy casualties are believed to be substantial based on visual observations. That is probably not true, because the Russians had the impression that there was panic and disorder in the bridgehead and only very light resistance. The report carries on. Own losses: 9 killed, 19 wounded, 53 missing, of whom 28 as a result of the bridge demolition. So, obviously, that is a lot less than the 400 claimed by the Russians. However, I will note that maybe the unit Kettenbeil is not in there. And the question then is, did they really withdraw first? I have the impression that this whole battle was kind of a bungled mess from the German side, with them, despite having called in air support, being thrown out by only infantry from this bridgehead. And the Russians bouncing across the river relatively quickly, forcing a withdrawal that was then messed up. It also occurs to me that Unit Kettenbeil, and especially the commander, was kind of made a scapegoat here. Obviously, these were not the same kind of steadfast young soldiers that the training units were, but older men as well as Russians apparently, not to mention the AA recruits. So it was probably easy to blame many of these setbacks on them. In the end, of course, it is hard to ascertain what really happened. However, if you compare the two reports, it seems quite obvious that the Russians really carried the day here and had a rather significant success, and that the Germans did not really make the most of their position here and were forced to withdraw relatively quickly and then also made a mess of that. Lastly, I thought you'd maybe get a kick out of this before we end. Now, this video, I'm afraid to say, is actually AI slop, technically, because I use ChatGPT to translate these documents, because it's quicker than when I do it by hand, and normally it's fine, I just have to read through them and fix it. So at the end I thought, you know what, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to generate an illustration of this AAR, and this is what came out. And I think this really shows the problems with AI. I mean, I guess this kind of looks like a T-34 with the sloped front, but the turret almost looks like a Panzer II or some other German tank. The Stuka, I mean, this Stuka is fine, kind of. You can see what it means. Obviously the bridge is there, and the terrain kind of fits to a degree, although I think it was probably more like a stone bridge. It also looks like the Stukas are bombing the bridge instead of the bridge getting blown up. The hand weapons are really weird. This is like a, I don't know, it looks like a MP34 with a bipod or something instead of an MG. This rifle completely messed up. Again, like BAR. This guy, well, I guess he maybe has the rifle like with a sling, but they're running towards the exploding bridge. I mean, it's a very dynamic scene. maybe I will use this on the thumbnail as clickbait or rage bait, as they say these days, but I think probably not. I already did that for the last video to a degree. Anyway, that's it for this video. That said, this story does actually go on, because obviously while they had retreated from the crash of Bridgehead, they were still not in the clear, and the battles continued. If you are interested in more from this, please leave a comment to that effect. Otherwise, I might actually go into a different direction, look at something else. But yeah, I thought this was quite an interesting, obscure engagement. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.